Next slide, please. The GCM has three major components. One is the preamble, the second, the vision and guiding principles, and third, cooperative framework. Next slide. On the preamble, I just would like to highlight that while the compact recognizes that distinction being governed by separate frameworks, it underscores nonetheless the entitlement of both of them to the same universal rights and fundamental freedoms. And while the compact is non-legally binding, in nature, it bears cooperative framework that builds on commitments of the member states. Next slide. The second component, the vision and guiding principles, express the UN member states' collective commitment to improve cooperation and international migration, having a common 360-degree vision of international migration. And what does this mean? It means the recognition for a need for a more comprehensive approach to optimize the benefits of migration and at the same time collectively addressing the risks and challenges for all stakeholders. And on the screen, you can see the cross-cutting and interdependent guiding principles laid down in the compact. And I just would like also to emphasize that while the compact espouses international cooperation, it recognizes the sovereign right of states to determine their national migration policy and their prerogative to govern migration within their jurisdiction. And also, it is worth to mention that the compact aims to ensure the empowerment of and respect for human rights of women, men, girls, and boys at all stages of migration, and also promotes existing international legal obligations to the rights of a child and uphold the best interests of the child. And also, it gives premium to the multi-stakeholder partnerships to address migration concerns. And that means we need the engagement, involvement of the trade union, the diasporas, the private sector, the media, and everyone in our country and everyone in our region. Next slide, please. The cooperative framework component actually comprises of 23 objectives and specific commitments. And it's good to note also that the GCM ensures that we have implementation mechanism and also follow-up and review system. And I'd like to cite, for example, this milestone development, the establishment of the UN Network on Migration, which is very welcome to all of us, with IOM being designated as the coordinator and secretariat of this network. And also, we will have a reporting to the UN General Assembly on biennial basis. And also, with respect to the implementation or follow-up review, it is encouraged that member states should have a national responses. And the next slide, the succeeding slides, will show you the 23 objectives. In the interest of time, I will not be discussing all of them, but I just would like to cite a particular one objective, for example. It's about item number 2 or objective number 2, about creating a conducive political, economic, social, and environmental conditions to help people realize their aspirations without the need to go out of their country or to seek livelihood elsewhere. Next slide, please. In this slide, I just would like to highlight objective number 6 because it highly anticipated to prevent abuses and all forms of exploitation with the express prohibition, for example, on confiscation of migrants' travel, identity documents, including contracts. This is a milestone, a very good development, especially for us as ASEAN. Next slide shows, of course, the 9 to 12 objectives, but it's good to mention there the effort to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons and so also smuggling of migrants. Next slide. The next slide shows 13 to 16 objectives. And I just would like to cite, for example, in objective of 15, it also incorporates the health needs of the migrants. The next slide, the last three objectives, I just would like to cite, for example, the access to social protection and the portability of social security entitlements. And what, next slide please, and this with anticipated adoption of the Global Compact, it is now crucial for all of us on how the UN member states in general and the ASEAN member states and the ASEAN as a region move forward towards the implementation of the commitments. And my question here is, in what way the ASEAN members and the region can contribute to and benefit the most from the GCM? How do we prepare the ground to help translate into action those commitments? Next slide. I just would like to say that the things that or issues that matter most to us, with more than 20 million people working overseas, landed in the text of GCM. Next slide. And I can say that GCM will in fact reinforce, expand protective mechanisms for migrants under the ASEAN frameworks. And next slide. Even our ALM work program can also be strengthened with the GCM in action. Next slide. The succeeding slide are just some of examples on how we can move forward as an ASEAN region in the implementation of the GCM. And lastly, I just would like to say that the GCM may not be a panacea to all issues and challenges and on international migration, but it is already a big leap to what we have all been advocating for, and this is the protection of all migrants. And this time, it is not just about the whole of government, nor just some sectors recognizing the potentials of international migration and addressing concerns. It is now the whole of the world pushing forward initiatives to make international migration work for the best interest of everyone. As mentioned earlier, GCM and international migration is now a global agenda. So our challenge now is we have all to be on board. Thank you so much. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a it's a good snapshot of the GCM. It captures what are the principles, it what captures the objectives of the GCM, but also really the emphasis on the presentation, this presentation is how we can work together. The GCM provides us a framework of how we can work together. As you know, migration is not just covered by one sector alone. It's really more multi-sectoral. It's across the whole of society, and all of us have the opportunity as well as the responsibility to contribute towards the protection of migrants as well as their migrant families and work together for a better future. As was also mentioned, it is not a panacea of all issues related to migration. There's a lot of challenges given the toxic narrative of migration these days, but we do in our own ways through the ASEAN partnership and collaboration, how we can work together to address these challenges. And just to also underline that the GCM actually also is within the framework of the SDGs. And as you will remember in the SDGs, there's several, at least 5 goals that also relate to migration, and importantly is the goal 10, where goal 10.7 refers to safe, orderly, and facilitated migration. Thank you very much again. Another round of applause. So our next speaker is Mr. Nilim Barua. He's the senior specialist in migration at ILO Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. And without further ado, he will speak on updates on migrant worker related targets and of the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. The SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and the 2030 Agenda, this is the overarching framework of the UN system, the UN member states. The overarching framework for the development agenda. And the implementation of the ASEAN framework, the Global Compact on Migration, will contribute to the achievement of the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals. Like you would know that prior to the SDGs, there was the Millennium Development Goals. Now, in the Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, migration was hardly mentioned. But that is quite different with respect to the SDGs. As we heard in the opening remarks from Ambassador Reichman from Switzerland, positive contribution of migrants for inclusive growth and sustainable development is recognized in the SDGs. And of course, this has to be recognized when you look at the recorded remittance flows, which are some 436 billion US dollars, which is more than official development assistance and even more than foreign direct investment in some countries. But the SDGs is not only about remittance flows, important as that is, it's also about a rights-based approach. A key feature of the SDGs is to leave no one behind. And leave no one behind means also not to leave migrant workers behind, migrants behind. And you will see that in goal 17, there is a target to disaggregate the data collection by migratory status. That is, look at how the SDGs impact on migrants. Now, with regards to migration in the SDGs, migration is particularly mentioned under Goal 8, which is to do with decent work and economic growth, and Goal 10, which is on reducing inequalities within countries and among countries. So if we look at target 8.7 and 8.8 under Goal 8, you find there's a call to eliminate forced labor, child labor, modern day slavery and human trafficking. And you know many of these issues concern migrant workers and migrants. There's also target 8.8 to protect labor rights, promote safe and secure working environments for all workers, including migrant workers and women migrants. If we look at target 10.7 under goal 10, there's a call to facilitate orderly, safe, regular, responsible migration and the mobility of people, including to the implementation of planned and well-managed migration policies. And this target has guided the Global Compact on Migration. And if you look at the Global Compact on Migration, the discussions are very much centered around safe and orderly migration. Under Goal 10 on reducing inequalities, there is a specific target to reduce the transaction cost of remittances to less than 3% and to eliminate any remittance corridors where the remittance cost is more than 5%. And finally, as I was mentioning earlier with regards to leave no one behind, the data collection in the monitoring framework of the SDGs is to disaggregate by migratory status. And therefore, this makes migration relevant in all the SDGs that are there, all 17 SDGs. Now, a particular feature of the SDGs as compared to the earlier MDGs is that there is quite a rigorous framework for setting of targets and the monitoring of the achievement of these targets through indicators. And there are a number of global indicators that have been set for each of the targets, about 1 or 2 indicators per target. And the indicators have been classified as tier 1, 2, and 3, depending on the there's an indicator which is conceptually clear, there's an accepted methodology, and it's been regularly collected. This is a tier 1 indicator. If there's a indicator where the methodology is accepted, the concept is clear, but it is not, the data is not being regularly collected, it's a tier 2 indicator. And a tier 3 indicator is when there's no accepted methodology and neither is it being collected regularly. So if we look at the indicators under goal 8 and goal 10, so under goal 8.8 which is about labor rights, including the rights of migrant workers, we have two indicators. One is the frequency of fatal and non-fatal occupational injuries by sex and migratory status. This is a tier 2 indicator, and ILO is the custodian agency or the technical agency to help develop the methodology of the indicator. This is a tier 2 indicator because the methodology is accepted, the concept is there, but it's not being collected regularly. So the data is not being collected regularly. So the call for action here is to collect occupational health and safety data broken up by migratory status, and it becomes a tier 1. Now, the next indicator under target 8.8 on labor rights is the increase in compliance of labor rights based on ILO textual sources and national legislation by sex and migratory status. This indicator, there is actually a methodology and concept. Why it is currently tier 3 is there has not been agreement so far on the methodology, but we hope that by November this acceptance of the methodology will be there and it will move up to tier 1. So if we look at the 8.8 indicators, the one on first one on occupational health and safety and the second regarding labor standards. As I was mentioning that the data on occupational health and safety actually is being collected by a large number of countries, but where we need more work is disaggregation by migratory status. This is actually very important in achieving our SDGs as well as in implementation and day-to-day occupational health and safety issues, because we should have data disaggregated by migratory status, because we do know in countries where this data is being collected that actually there is a higher rate of accidents amongst migrant workers, especially in the first 6 months to a year when they're not familiar with the country, the language, the systems, etc. So it's very important to start collecting occupational health and safety data broken up by migratory status. Now, I don't have very much time left, so let me just mention quickly about the voluntary national reviews. Now, these are reviews undertaken voluntarily by countries, and in the ASEAN countries, we have reviews undertaken already by between 2016 and now by Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam. And when we look at these reports, this is what we see in terms of mention of the progress regarding 8.8 or labor rights mentioned in Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. Target 10.7 is on well-managed migration, and there are two indicators here. One is on recruitment cost as proportion of wages earned in the country of destination, and an index of well-managed migration policies where the custodian agencies are IOM and the UN Population Division. as I mentioned earlier, we also have a remittance cost indicator, which is being collected. Now, I don't have much time now, but just I'd like to mention that the draft guidelines for collecting statistics on recruitment costs has been developed by the World Bank and the ILO. And there has been a consultative workshop just this month in Washington involving NSOs from Africa, Asia, and Latin America, 11 NSOs, National Statistics Organization. And from Asia, we had Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, the NSOs participating. And we hope that there is a experts group on the indicators. And we hope that the guidelines are presented in November and it moves up to tier 2. And after that, we will engage in pilot implementation of collection of data. And it would be important to have the indicator collected in as many countries as possible so that it becomes tier 1 indicator. Finally, in terms of the national voluntary reviews, there is mention in the reports of Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore on progress on the 10.7, well-managed migration. Thailand mentions the increase in minimum wage and regular labor inspection. In particular, it mentions the improvement in surveillance in the 22 coastal provinces with regards to fishing. Malaysia mentions the minimum wage policy. And in Singapore, there is mention of the importance of social cohesion and harmony between different community groups. And Singapore also mentions the immigration program, which is mainly to do with the highly skilled migrants, because they have a pathway to permanent residency with regards to the highly skilled. So thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ninin. I think it is a very good way for Ninin's session to actually remind us of the SDGs and also underline the positive contributions of migrants that are acknowledged or in the SDGs. But also that SDGs also allows us, all the countries and all of us actors here in the room, to also remind ourselves that it is a right-based approach and that the SDGs actually then puts emphasis on the migrant or the person-centered approach, and therefore assuring us that there's no one left behind. Again, many challenges that are that we need to address in terms of the SDGs. But one of the key points, one takeaway from Ninin's presentation is the importance of looking at the indicators to measure the progress that we all have to do in terms of the SDGs, accomplishing the SDGs. The indicators, if you also the importance of data, disaggregated data. As we know, migration data